Hello and welcome to episode 48, I believe, of Mathghamhain Morsels. This will again be in the Merry Meals series, which I just started in the last episode on grilled cheeses. This one's going to be similar in that I'm looking at a fairly classic dish. This one I've already done one episode on. Back in the Simple Comfort series, I did the pork chops, rice, and mushroom soup. I think it was in the Simple Comforts. It might have been in the Simple is Sexy, but I'm pretty sure it was Simple Comforts. And I'm going to revisit that. So one thing with that meal was it took a fair bit of time in order to really build the flavors. So I'm doing a faster version here. All I have in the pan right now is I have some amazing pork fat. This fat is actually Mengalitsa pork fat, but you don't need to get fancy like that. Just some good lard works wonders, or whatever your preferred cooking fat is. Into this, I'm just going to start by throwing in some mushrooms and getting them sauteed a little bit. Get a bit of color and flavor and let them cook for a few moments. But the real trick is going to be, rather than using a nice big pork chop in this, I'm instead going to be using ground beef. So, I have some, ground pork, not ground beef, ground pork. So I have some ground pork right here, which is just going to wait until these mushrooms are done. This is again, of course, going to be served with rice. I've already cooked up my rice, and it's just waiting for everything else. And this is going to be a much faster version. So, the pork chops, rice, and mushroom soup version that I did was slow cook for a good number of hours so that all the flavors just marry together and become delicious. And just this thick, unctuous sauce that is absolutely amazing. This one's faster. This is more of a midweek meal, but it still has that fantastic stick-to-your-ribs element that in this time of the year, you really want from your food. You want some nice, hearty, northern hot dish. Not just something that is light and simple. No, that's more of a spring or summer type dish. This is going to be a perfect winter meal. The mushrooms look like they're about done, and they get a massive amount of flavor from that pork fat that I have in there, especially from the Mengalitsa pork, which is a heritage hog. So it's not the normal type of pork that you get. Mengalitsa is also called the woolly pig. It has this amazing buttery pork fat, fantastic flavor. The meat is a lot darker than normal pig, normal pork. It's almost like a red meat, but it's still white. Just a hell of a lot of flavor and amazing. Like I said, you don't need to go whole hog, as it were. You could just go for standard pork, use standard lard. That's perfectly fine. The ground pork I'm using is just standard ground pork. Nothing really special about it. I just had a little bit of Mengalitsa use it in this and give it just that added little punch of flavor. So the mushrooms look good for right now. I'm just going to take those out and set those to the side with the little bits of crispy fat. It's kind of like a uncured bacon at this point. Uncured, unsmoked, but just as delicious. So, I got that out. My pan's still nice and hot. So, in goes my ground pork. And as I've said before, if you're going to press meat down, you want to press it down almost as soon as it hits the pan. That way you aren't squeezing out the juice, you're just getting it situated. So I pressed it down real fast to give it some more contact with the bottom. And I'm going to get some of those fantastic maillots going with that beautiful Mengalitsa fat and the pork. Again, normal lard works, other types of cooking fat, if you prefer a different cooking fat, works beautifully. I'm just using what I had to hand, and I had some Mengalitsa pork. So, you want to get this a fair bit of coloration, because unlike the time before, this isn't going to be bubbling away for hours and hours, letting those flavors build and bloom. No, this has to be punchy in and of itself. It has to have that same depth of flavor, so you get the enjoyment of a long, slow cook without the actual work of a long, slow cook and the time that it takes to do a long, slow cook. So I want to keep this all together. And let that caramelize up, get those maillots, get that sear, that crust. Just allow all those flavors to marry together. Get that amazing crust on the meat. Once I have a good crust on both sides, that's when I'm going to start breaking up and still let it brown more, let it just build more flavor. So, at this point, I should have a half decent crust on the other side, so now just get in there with the spatula and break this all up. Give the pan a shake. And you're just going to let this brown up even more. And just let everything get together by cooking the mushrooms in that Mengalitsa pork lard. I was able to get a bit of a mushroomy flavor into the grease, but it's more going to come from when I add back in the mushrooms and when I add, again, I'm just going to use the quick and simple way, and rather than making a cream of mushroom soup myself for this, I'm just going to use Campbell's cream of mushroom. Just get this going, keep it moving. If you need to, turn up the heat. I started this on medium. I'm turning it up to medium-high because this pan cools a bit more than my cast iron does. But again, this is something that if you do use cast iron in a lot of your cooking, I recommend not using it to cook this, just because the cleanup's a pain in the ass. So go and break it up a bit more every so often. And you need a good amount of heat in the pan because you want it to be hot enough so that the juices that come out end up being steamed off really quick so that it isn't just steaming the pork the entire time. You want the browning. You need the heat. One of the things that I did for the rice in this was I used some chicken broth, and I also used a little bit of better than bouillon, which is just a jar that looks like this. I used the roasted chicken in the rice just to give it more flavor, and I'm going to be using a bit of that in the dish as well, just again to give it some more oomph. That flew out of the pan, caught it in my other hand, and hot pork is not the best thing to catch in your hand. Let's turn up the heat a little bit more again. Again, you really want to get some nice sear on the meat. You really want to brown it because this won't get the long, slow cooking that the previous one got. This gets short. It's entirely on stovetop unless you really want to just stick it in the oven for a few minutes. But this is just going to be done on stovetop for me. Okay, and I'm going to throw back in the mushrooms that I did. And those mushrooms, they're entirely optional. I like doing them just because they add more flavor and make up for the fact that this isn't a long, slow cook. It's just like maybe 25, 30 minutes on stovetop, if that. So that's looking good. Now then, in go cans of soup. So I used about a pound of ground pork. Just just a small handful of mushrooms. And a couple nubs of that amazing fat. So into that, I'm going to throw 2 small cans. Of this caramel mushroom soup. Trying to get as much out of the cans as I can. Give now the mix on the heat. Already this smells amazing. Give it a toss. And let's go in with the second can of soup. Again, scraping the inside of the can to get as much of that soup out as I can. Be careful, this will try to spit every so often. And now's a good time to turn the heat back down to medium. There we go. Let this bubble away on the stovetop for a little bit, and like I said, just to up the flavor a little bit. I'm going to put in some of the better than bouillon. About a teaspoon. Teaspoon and a half, somewhere in there. That's plenty. You do not need all that much because it goes a good while. It stretches nicely. So that'll just up the flavor, give it a bit more of that long, slow cooked taste. And then you just let this bubble away on the stovetop. Since that's the last part, I'm not going to bore you guys by making you watch it just bubble away. I'll join up with you guys at my desk once this is finished. Okay, so here we are back at my table, and all I did was I mixed the rice in with the ground pork, mushroom soup, and all that good stuff. So, this always tastes amazing. And today's no exception. If it's a bit too salty, or you want to make sure that it doesn't get a bit too salty, I recommend using the low sodium soups. As you probably noticed when I was cooking this, I didn't add any salt. So, go for low sodium soup or low sodium better than bouillon. Anything like that will cut the amount of salt in this. Just use water rather than broth and bouillon in order to make your rice. Also really cuts down the salt. But this is absolutely delicious. Like I said, it is good winter fare. Just stick to your ribs. With
all the flavors, the pork, the mushroom soup, the sauteed mushrooms, the broth, and better than bouillon used in this. It tastes like it was cooking all day. It was cooking for about 30 minutes, if that. The longest part was cooking the rice. This is just a absolutely delicious winter meal. You can also cut down the salt a little bit. If it gets too salty, add in a bit of cream and just mix it through. Make sure that it becomes the right consistency again. And the creaminess will cut through that a little bit. One of the other tricks I use for salt, I never use in this dish, because a good chunk of the time, if something gets too salty, you can use acid to cut down the salt. But this dish would not go well with lemon or lime or anything like that. So I advise against that. Like I said, if you want to cut it down, use low salt ingredients. And if it's still a bit too salty, mix in some heavy cream. The heavy cream will make sure that that salt level balances out. It's also a way of stretching this dish a little bit further. To feed a larger family without having to just buy more of everything. Heavy cream adds a bit more fat, makes it a bit bigger of a meal. This is just fantastic, though. And this is one of the meals that it's almost better when it's reheated. So, here you go. A 30-minute pork, mushroom soup, and rice. Absolutely delicious. Give it a go if you haven't had anything like this before. It's northern hot pot. Northern hot dish, however you want to refer to it. Well, not hot pot. Hot pot's a different style, but hot dish. Just fantastic. So I'll leave off with my normal command or challenge, however you want to look at it, of try something new. But part of the holidays is just going back to classics and making food that doesn't take all that much effort when it's not one of the feast meals. The feast meals always take a lot of effort, but in the in-between, just making good, honest food that's absolutely delicious and something that you can bring your family around. This is one of those dishes. So it's okay to return to something classic, but try something new. Just one or two ingredients in a classic dish can really bring it up. Enjoy your food. Enjoy your life. And with that, have a good one all. I'm going to finish my dinner.